The last common type of error we'll cover for now is the syntax error. A syntax error is kind of a catch-all error. It refers to a lot of different things that can be done wrong, all based on violating Python's internal grammar. It's kind of like misusing a comma or misusing a semicolon in writing an essay. We can see a very easy example of this just with the print statements we've been using so far. We've talked about how Python requires parentheses to surround whatever it's supposed to print. So to print something, we write the word print, followed by an open parentheses, whatever we want to print, and a close parentheses. When we run this line of code, it would print the number 5, which I've somehow forgotten to put in my output over on the right. But really, it would appear somewhere up here. What happens if I don't use parentheses, though? When Python gets to line 2, it tries to run this line, but here we just have 5 on its own separated by a space rather than in parentheses. When it reaches this line, we get a syntax error. And specifically, it tells us that it occurred on the number 5. And it just tells us invalid syntax. So that tells us exactly where Python stopped being able to understand what we were trying to tell it to do. Now, this is a particularly interesting example because old versions of Python, specifically Python 2, used this kind of print statement. Newer versions use the first kind of print statement. You'll still see lots of Python written using the older version, so you might actually see this line written in some places, and sometimes it might actually work if the person's running an older version of Python. In our material, though, we're assuming that we're using the newer version of Python, and so that line should give us a syntax error. This is also a great time to make sure that you're running the right version of Python. Try out that second line and see if you get an error. If you don't, you need to switch over to Python 3. 95% of our material will still make sense if you're running the wrong version, but there will definitely be places where things are a little bit confusing or unclear because Python 2 does things a little bit differently than Python 3. Now, syntax errors can encompass a wide variety of different problems. They can also be somewhat hard to debug. Syntax error means Python couldn't even read what was written, so it can't give the kinds of feedback like it gave on earlier errors. Hopefully, in most cases, the solution will be as simple as this one.